Okay, let's dive right into this incredibly dramatic explainer, where we're going to uncover how a truly brilliant military reform ended up nearly destroying ancient Rome. We are looking at a pivotal moment in history, a clash of titans that pitted Roman against Roman, and fundamentally altered the trajectory of the ancient world. Honestly, it's a story packed with tactical genius, fierce political ambition, and just absolute unyielding ruthlessness.
So, Part 1, Rome under siege. The date is November 82 BC.
We are dropping right into a moment of terrifying chaos where the Republic's survival literally hangs by a thread. A massive army of over 70,000 men has bypassed Roman defenses and is now camped just 10 stadia from the city's gates. And listen, this isn't just some ragtag rebellion. We're talking about a highly organized, lethal force made up of disgruntled Marian faction soldiers and fierce Samnite warriors. They've marched all through the night along the Via Latina, completely blindsiding the terrified citizens of Rome, who are now staring down a catastrophic siege.
To really understand the stakes, just listen to this quote. It perfectly captures the sheer hatred of the Samnite leader, Pontius Telesinus, who wants to literally eradicate Rome and its citizens from the map. He's riding up and down his battle lines, telling his men that the robbers of Italian liberty absolutely must be annihilated. Telesinus views this not just as a political battle, it's a mission of ultimate vengeance, to burn down the forest where the Roman wolves take refuge. For him, the complete and utter destruction of the city is the only acceptable outcome.
But before the slaughter begins, we really have to ask ourselves, how on earth did Rome end up facing its own allies and veterans in a brutal civil war? How did this unstoppable Roman military machine turn its weapons inward, threatening the very state it was built to protect? That brings us to Part 2. Mauritius Revolution and Army Reforms. To understand how Rome ended up here, we have to rewind a few decades and look at the brilliant military commander Gaius Marius. Now, Marius was an outsider. He was a new man, lacking noble ancestry, who completely revolutionized how Rome fought its wars. Operating in Africa against Jugurtha and later against northern tribes, Marius realized the old ways of raising an army just weren't going to cut it anymore. He needed manpower, and he needed it fast. Think about the stark contrast in what he did. Marius took an army of self-funded citizens and transformed it into a state-funded professional force that actually included the poorest Romans. Previously, you had to own property to serve, right? Because you had to buy your own weapons. But Marius opened the ranks to the capitacensi, the propertyless masses. Suddenly, being a soldier wasn't just a civic duty for the wealthy, it became a paying career for the poor. He also standardized their gear. This meant the state equipped every single man with heavy chainmail, a massive wooden shield, and a lethal Spanish short sword. Because the state was footing the bill, every legionary became a uniformly lethal killing machine. Gone were the days of different ranks having different armor based on their personal wealth. Marius essentially created a cohesive, standardized infantry that could move and fight as one massive, unified block.
And a crucial detail here is his extremely clever redesign of the pilum. This was a heavy javelin built with a wooden rivet that deliberately bent upon impact, so enemies couldn't throw it back. When this iron-tipped spear hit an enemy's shield, it would penetrate, and that wooden peg would snap or bend, so the enemy couldn't pull it out, and they definitely couldn't advance with a heavy javelin dragging on the ground. They had to discard their shields entirely, leaving them completely exposed to those Roman short swords in close combat. It was a tactical masterstroke.
Part 3. The General's Army and its Unintended Consequences. While these tactical upgrades easily crushed external threats, they inadvertently created a massive, catastrophic internal vulnerability. Because they were fighting for retirement land and loot, these incredibly lethal soldiers became personal armies, completely loyal to their generals instead of the Republic. This right here is the fatal flaw in Marius's brilliant system. The Senate didn't automatically guarantee land for retiring veterans. The individual generals had to fight for it politically. So if you're a poor soldier looking for a pension, are you going to be loyal to a distant Senate or to the general who pays you, leads you to plunder, and personally secures your retirement farm? Let's look at how this builds into the rapid, bloody escalation of 82 BC, leading directly to the Marian faction and their Samnite allies marching on Rome itself. We see the aristocrat Sulla landing in Italy with his loyal, battle-hardened veterans. He has these swift victories, driving the Marian forces and the young Gaius Marius into a desperate siege at Praeneste. And finally, when the Marian and Samnite relief armies realize they absolutely cannot break Sulla's siege, they make a terrifying, audacious pivot. They march straight for an undefended Rome. Part 4. Clash at the Colline Gate. The Final Stand.
This brings us right back to that terrifying climax on the afternoon of November 1st. Inside the city, the citizens of Rome are in an absolute panic. A few courageous young nobles actually ride out to stall the enemy, but they are easily swatted aside by this massive Samnite army. Then, Sulla finally arrives with his veteran legions. And, completely ignoring his lieutenant's advice to let the men rest, he throws his exhausted soldiers straight into battle against Telesinus. Sulla's forces had just force-marched all the way from Praeneste. His officers begged him to let the men recover, but Sulla, fearing a night of terror and chaos within the city walls, orders the attack at the 10th hour, late in the afternoon. The battle is joined just as daylight is starting to fade.
The fighting is incredibly desperate. Sulla's left wing completely collapses, he is almost killed by enemy spears, and wild rumors of his death even spread back to the sieged city of Praeneste. The Samnites are fighting with unmatched fury. Sulla himself rides right into the vanguard, desperately trying to rally his fleeing troops. He is actively targeted, with spears narrowly missing him. It gets so bad he's literally forced to shut the city gates behind his own retreating men, so they have absolutely no choice but to turn around, stand, and fight. For hours it looks like Sulla has lost and Rome is completely doomed. But then, the tide turns in the dead of night. A messenger arrives from Marcus Licinius Crassus, reporting that his right wing had completely crushed the enemy forces. Crassus had relentlessly pushed the Marian and Samnite left flank back, chasing them into the dark all the way to the town of Antemne. So while Sulla was fighting for his life, Crassus was winning a massive, decisive victory on the completely opposite side of the battlefield. Part 5, Sulla's Revenge, the Aftermath. By the morning of November 2nd, the Marian Samnite army is annihilated, and Sulla claims total victory. With Crassus's success and Sulla finally managing to rally his troops, the enemy lines just break. Some even defect mid-battle. The immediate threat to Rome is over, but the bloodshed, it's just beginning. This single staggering number, 50,000, really highlights the sheer apocalyptic scale of the slaughter during this brief civil war battle. 50,000 Romans, Samnites, and allies dead on the field. The scale of this violence between fellow countrymen was totally unprecedented. But for Sulla, just defeating his enemies wasn't enough. He needed to send a message that would completely paralyze any remaining resistance. To cement his power, Sulla engages in some truly ruthless psychological warfare. He massacres thousands of prisoners right next to the terrified Roman Senate and literally catapults the severed heads of the Marian leaders into Praeneste to force their surrender. He gathers the surviving Samnite prisoners, thousands of them, in the Campus Martius and has them systematically butchered. And the screams can literally be heard by the Senate, who Sulla is casually addressing nearby. He then takes the severed heads of Pontius Telesinus and the Marian commanders, parades them before the besieged forces at Praeneste, and tosses them right over the walls. The psychological terror works perfectly. The Marians lose all hope, the fortress surrenders, and Sulla's grip on Rome is complete. So we are left with a final, incredibly chilling question to ponder. Did the very military reforms meant to defend Rome ultimately guarantee it would be torn apart from the inside? Marius created the most effective fighting force the ancient world had ever seen, but he tied their loyalty to their generals, not to the state. The Battle of the Colline Gate proved that when a general turned that ultimate weapon against Rome itself, the Republic stood absolutely no chance. The Republic was saved from the Samnites that day, sure, but it had permanently lost its soul to the era of the warlords. Think about that as you process this history. Sometimes the very mechanisms we build to secure our safety end up becoming the exact tools of our own destruction.